This hearing began like a routine court proceeding, but quickly turned into a detailed medical examination of an infant death case. As expert witnesses took the stand, the court focused on one question: whether the child's injuries were accidental or the result of abuse. The testimony that followed would center on medical science, timelines, and the actions taken before help was ever called.
All right. Let the record reflect that the applicant, Mr. Garner's here, Ms. Gilbert, Mr. Udishin, Mr. Coleman, and Ms. Shield are all here. Before we get started, Mr. Coleman, with your first witness, is there anything that we need to take up this afternoon?
Nothing to say, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I do have one thing. The next few witnesses, certainly this first one from the state, have in their affidavits reference to other children that there was an allegation that Mr. Garner had done something to harm. And we do object to the court considering those other children on several bases. First of all,
Your Honor, I'm sorry, we concede that. We won't go into that.
Okay, perfect.
I already planned for that and anticipated this objection.
Okay.
all right,
That was easy.
That was
Good job.
easier enough.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Yes, ma'am. I will say that I have 3 of my 4 expert witnesses here. I don't know if the court would like to do your normal practice like we do with the jury trials, swear them all in at one time. I suspect Mr. Udishin will be invoking the rule, so.
Yeah, I will invoke the rule, except as to Dr. Edwards, since
Sure.
we already agreed on that.
Okay, so yeah, we'll just get them all 3. Everybody can come up and I'll go ahead and get that out of the way. Good afternoon, everyone.
Yeah.
You'll please raise your right hands. Do you, each of you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you give in this hearing will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I did.
Thank you. And so the rule is invoked. Dr. Edwards, you're welcome to stay. For the others, you're obviously going to have to sit outside, not listen to any other testimony. Don't watch anything. It is on YouTube, so don't pull it up on YouTube. And don't discuss your testimony with anyone other than lawyers or investigators.
There is one other thing, Judge, it may benefit these witnesses to hear how you rule on this. While I'm not going to delve into the involvement of CPS, I planned on asking a question about how the child Kaylin was discovered, and the baby was discovered by a CPS caseworker in distress. That was the extent of that I plan on going into that.
That was part of the underlying
Yeah.
facts of the case that I read in the transcript. So I don't see any issue with if it's in the if it's anything that was presented in the trial itself, then I think that is within the limits. If it's not, then I would say it's not, other than scientific or new medical evidence.
And Your Honor, obviously that's correct. There was some testimony concerning one of the other children in the punishment phase of the trial. And I understand that's what Mr. Coleman's not going to go into or assert.
I would agree, correct? Yeah.
Yes, Judge.
Okay, perfect. Anything else?
No, ma'am.
All right, thank you. Y'all can step outside other than Dr. Edwards, you can remain in. All right, anything else?
No.
And Mr. Coleman, which one are you, and you want to go ahead and
At this time, state called Dr. Michael Yu.
all right, Dr. Yu, come on up, sir. We won't make you walk out and walk back in.
Thank you.
You can have a seat. And is the light on that microphone right there on the left side?
And what?
It's already on. Perfect. Okay, you may proceed, Mr. Coleman.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Yu, please state your full name for the court reporter and spell your last name, please.
Yes, my name is Michael Yu, M-I-C-H-E-L, last name spells Y-U.
And Dr. Yu, how are you employed, sir?
I'm currently assistant clinical professor at the University of Texas Medical Branch.
And let's talk about your background just briefly. Are you board certified in general pediatrics?
Yes,
And what about in child abuse pediatrics?
I'm board eligible.
Meaning at some point, or are you planning on,
Getting board certification? Yes,
when is that exam coming up?
next week.
Oh, good luck with it. Have you completed a child abuse and neglect fellowship?
Yes,
What did that entail?
3 years of bedside treatment of patients with suspected maltreatment. That also included research and also doing other scholarly activities.
And you mentioned your duties as a professor. That's at UTMB, Galveston Branch.
Yes.
And that's as a clinical professor. Explain really briefly for the judge what that means, being a clinical professor.
So that's a mixture of doing patient work and also doing education, teaching medical students, teaching other residents and faculty members about my field.
And in addition to that, you're also a director or the director of the ABC team, the child abuse team there at UTMB, correct?
Yes.
And the child abuse team, what do they do?
So we evaluate patients with suspected abuse and neglect issues, and we also do the foster care clinic.
All right, oh, very good. And I don't recall if you said or stated the year that you graduated from medical school, did you?
That will be 2019.
2019. And of the 4 expert witnesses that the state intends to call, you are undoubtedly the youngest and the most recent grad, correct?
Yes, from what I know, yes.
All right. And is it fair to say that the other witnesses have at least a couple of decades, maybe more, on you as far as experience?
Correct.
And I'm not saying that to be flippant or in jest. I'm saying that to say that you would have been, of the 4, the most recent to graduate, the most recent to have undergone training in medical school as it relates to diagnosing and treating shaken baby syndrome and or abusive head trauma as it relates to infants, correct?
Yes.
Did you or were you asked by our office, the district attorney's office, to review a criminal case file related to a deceased 2-month-old by the name of Dalen Garner?
He would have been around 11 months when he deceased, but yes, I reviewed young Gardner's files.
And just to be clear, if you recall, and if you need to review your affidavit or whatever materials you brought with you, when he ultimately died, he was 11 months or thereabout.
Correct.
When he sustained the injury leading to his death, how old was he?
He would have been 2 months.
Okay, good. And you reviewed that information that was provided to you. Do you recall what that information included?
Yes.
What did it include?
So it included court testimony from the Garner case back in the year 2003, included medical records from multiple hospitals, included therapy notes from when the child was discharged, other hospitalizations, his autopsy, and witness statements, and other files.
Very good. And approximately when did you review these records?
Around January, February.
Of this year?
Yes.
All right. And included in that information, did it reference a discovery of Kalen and his state when he was discovered?
Yes.
What do you recall about the discovery?
So a CPS worker went to the home unannounced. When she knocked on the door, the caregiver of the child.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that would be Luther Garner, correct?
Yes.
The defendant in this case?
Yes.
All right, please continue. I'm sorry.
No problem. Luther Garner opened the door and told the CPS worker that he thought his child may need to go to the hospital.
Okay. And the state that the child being Kalen was in, what did the records reflect in that regard?
The records reflected that he was not responsive.
Do you remember any other detail about this condition other than just being non-responsive? If you recall, sorry.
He had altered breathing patterns, so what we call apnea. He would not blink whenever the CPS worker was trying to snap her fingers in front of his eyes. That's what I can recall.
And the defendant, Luther Gardner, essentially acknowledged his awareness of this to that CPS caseworker, correct?
Yes.
And as a clinical practitioner and someone who's trained in recognizing abuse in children, what, if anything, in your training and experience would that be indicative of as far as, I can ask it a better way. Someone in that situation who doesn't immediately seek medical treatment for a child in obvious distress.
Objection, Your Honor, it's irrelevance. It's sorry. Sorry, objection, Your Honor, relevant regarding the new science. This is concerning other factual circumstances.
That's overruled. Obviously, part of what I'm to take into consideration is the underlying other factual circumstances surrounding it in the trial and other evidence when I make my ruling. So I'm going to allow to go down that path to some extent. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge. We were talking about your training experience as it relates to recognizing abuse in children. What does your training experience tell you or indicate to you about someone who would delay seeking medical treatment in this particular situation?
So a delay in care would be suspicious for non-accidental trauma.
Eventually, Kaylin was taken to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
Taken to the hospital by the CPS caseworker.
Yes.
And a CT scan, at least.
At this stage, the medical expert explained the most critical findings: massive brain swelling, retinal hemorrhaging, and severe oxygen deprivation. Doctors testified that multiple causes were carefully ruled out through differential diagnosis. According to the expert, delayed medical care and changing explanations became important factors when evaluating possible abusive head trauma.
The initial CT scan, what, if anything, did it indicate?
It indicated widespread swelling of the brain, what we call brain edema.
And if at any point, if it's helpful for you to review your affidavit, please do.
Okay.
But my notes indicate that you put in your affidavit, quote unquote, massive brain swelling, in which it may be parsing words here, mincing words, but you said widespread. I just want to make sure we're clear that in your affidavit, you said massive.
Correct.
All right. And what does massive brain swelling, in addition to the delay in seeking medical treatment, again, in your training experience, at least initially, what is that indicative of?
It'd be concerned for some type of trauma.
Also noted in those records was a bulging fontanelle. Is that how it's pronounced?
Yes, bulging fontanelle.
Fontanelle. Is that the front part of the infant's head?
So that is on the top of the head, kind of towards the front. That is the spacing between his skull.
Does that indicate an increased intracranial pressure?
Yes.
And that pressure, intracranial pressure, would be caused by what?
It can be caused by a number of things, such as bleeding. It can be caused by tumors, meningitis, increased brain swelling, a number of different things.
And in the process of treating Kaylin, did the records indicate that tumors were ruled out?
Yes.
In the process of treating Kaylin, do the records indicate that meningitis was ruled out?
Yes.
Yesterday, during the testimony of Dr. John Galaznik, he mentioned a differential diagnosis. Is ruling out, for instance, tumors, ruling out, for instance, meningitis, is that part and parcel, or is that part and parcel of a differential diagnosis?
Yes.
Differential diagnosis, your understanding of it being what?
So differential diagnosis is looking at the symptoms and coming up with a list of medical reasons for those symptoms.
And coming up with a list of those medical reasons for the symptoms so as to rule out
other diagnoses.
And along with the differential diagnosis, I mean, the long and short of it is you don't have some checklist that you're working with when you're looking to evaluate, diagnose, and or treat abusive head trauma in infants, do you?
There's no checklist. There's a workup, but there's no things we check off.
So in other words, someone suggests to you that there's a quote unquote triad, and if you get these three things in the triad, then you guys stop investigating or stop diagnosing or stop ruling things out.
We do not stop.
Just to be clear, if someone suggested that this triad consists solely of looking for subdural hematoma, retinal hemorrhaging, and an altered mental state, you reject that notion, correct?
I would reject that notion.
I mean, they could be part of the diagnosis, is that fair to say?
Yes.
But it's not that you...
Your Honor, I'm going to object to leading the witness.
I'll do a better job, Judge.
All right.
But I'll say this, Judge.
Here's the thing.
It's medical testimony. It's hard.
Yesterday was, and there wasn't an objection. but it was, and think it helps probably all of us to get through it to allow some leading. And so I think it's only fair that there's going to be some. So obviously be careful with it, but I'm not going to say no leading whatsoever with this type of hearing.
Thank you, Judge. We're talking about the triad and whether or not you just, once you've got those three things, you shut it down. Is that the case?
No.
No. Your notes also, or your affidavit also indicates that there was a documented loss of neurological function, correct?
Yes.
What other procedures were performed on Kalen as a part of his treatment overall?
So once he was transferred to Texas Children's, there was concern that he was not able to breathe on his own. He would not be able to eat on his own. So they put tubes into his trachea and his stomach so that he can maintain some oxygen support and some hydration and nutrition.
So this 2-month-old baby had a tracheostomy and a gastrostomy.
Yes.
Gastrostomy. Thank you. Yes. And that brings me to my next point. If I get any of these terms wrong or mispronounce them, feel free to correct me, please. Let's talk about the retinas. What, if anything, was noted with regard to the retinal examination?
There was bleeding to the back of his eyes, that the retina composes of many layers, and that there was bleeding in all 3 layers, and that it was not only found in the center of the back of his eyes, but extended to the periphery.
What's commonly referred to as extensive and multiple layered, correct?
Yes.
Why is that noteworthy?
Because when we're looking through our differential diagnosis for retinal hemorrhages, there can be many causes for retinal hemorrhages, but for multi-layered, extensive, diffuse retinal hemorrhages, trauma is the only cause.
Just to be clear, trauma is the only cause for multi-layered, extensive in distribution retinal
hemorrhages in kids.
Hemorrhages in infants, correct?
Yes.
While there may be other causes in adults, correct, or other causes in older individuals, when we're talking about infants, is that the case?
Yes.
Okay. Was an EEG or an electrocephalogram?
Yeah, electroencephalogram.
It's what you said.
Yes, it was done.
What was determined as a result of the EEG?
So it was determined that there was no seizure activity on the EEG.
Was a subsequent CAT scan done on Kalen?
Yes.
As it relates to the oxygen, the level of oxygen, what, if anything, did it show?
It showed injury due to a lack of oxygen to his brain.
What's referred to as anoxic?
Yes.
What is that, generally speaking, indicative of?
That's indicative of some type of loss of transport of red blood cells perfusing oxygen to his brain tissue.
Was there also atrophy of the brain?
Yes.
Now, the case materials that you reviewed, did it also include reference to the fact that this defendant gave varying accounts to law enforcement about what happened?
From what I reviewed, there were 3 statements he gave, and each statement contained more and more details about the events that happened that day.
Again, in your training and experience, much like the delayed seeking of medical treatment, the multi-layered retinal hemorrhaging and widespread diffuse nature of the retinal hemorrhaging, what does giving different accounts or varying accounts of the patient history, what is that in conjunction with all those other things indicative of?
That there would be concern for non-accidental trauma.
Particularly with regard to someone who's the sole caregiver, is that fair to say?
Yes.
And would all that information be considered part of what's referred to as the patient history?
Yes.
And you, as a clinical practitioner, when diagnosing at least the potential for abusive head trauma in an infant, you consider patient history as well, right?
Yes.
And is that the way that you were taught? And was that part of your training, your medical training as well?
Yes.
And then you understand from the records that the ultimate version that the defendant gave to law enforcement was what happened and what did.
As testimony concluded, the court was left weighing medical evidence against the caregiver's account of events. The hearing shifted from theory to responsibility, focusing on whether the injuries could be explained by accident alone. Ultimately, the judge must decide if the scientific findings support the original conclusions reached in this case.